Okay, guys, so Brian France, the CEO, or former CEO thereof, of NASCAR, has recently, got himself in a bit of trouble. What I mean by trouble? Well, let's just say that he was, driving while drunk, also in possession of controlled substances at the time of his arrest in the New York State. Twice over the legal limit, I may add, for his blood alcohol level. So, yeah, and top that off, this is coming off of Chase Elliott winning the most popular driver in NASCAR winning at a road course at Watkins Glen, a race that many people assumed he wouldn't really win at, and most people assumed that he would never really get a win this year. And then the most popular driver in NASCAR, getting his first win in the Cup Series. Something that has been eluding him for the past 2 years, through time and time again, having crap thrown his way from people always hating on him on the internet, to him beating himself up because of his mistakes and things that happen that are just out of his control. The most popular man in NASCAR, after Dale Jr. left the sport, finally gets himself a win, and the first thing that happens right after that is the freaking CEO of NASCAR, a person not too many people like, by the way, gets a DUI. He gets a DU freaking I. That's not good. That is not good for the face of NASCAR, okay? And honestly, I was planning to do a little something different with this one. I've been posting more than a couple of NASCAR videos on my channel. If you noticed that, I was wanting to do like this is my first real NASCAR discussion video, and I was wanting to make this video something really positive because Chase Elliott, man, the guy finally got himself a win. Something that has been eluding him time and time again. He finally got himself a win, and then Brian France goes and does this shit. Okay, I was wanting to have just such an awesome, like, really happy video about NASCAR and how Chase Elliott winning, kind of helps the development of the sport in some way. It's just a new guy coming in and helping us out. And then this stuff happens, and it just muddles everything that happened at Watkins Glen last week. It's bad. Alright, now, for those of you who have been living under a rock, I just gave you the lowdown. But I'm going to also give you some perspective into the whole Brian France situation, and why so many people think this is such a big deal. And it is a big deal, whether or not you like Brian France or think that he's been particularly winning NASCAR very well. Brian France has been a controversial figure in NASCAR since his ascension to the CEO spot of NASCAR since 2003. And, a lot of people really contribute a lot of faults of modern day NASCAR to Brian France. And in some ways I can't blame them. In some ways I can, though. Like, a lot of people really blame him for, like, the addition of the chase and the playoff stuff, getting rid of the old point system, getting rid of so many things that help make old school NASCAR great. And over the years, considering like all he's been doing is just going to maybe a couple races a year and not actually assuming a leadership role in NASCAR, a lot of people just assumed that he didn't care and that he was just doing whatever the hell he wanted, and damn who came before. And it got to the point so bad where people in NASCAR were like, removing his power, though they still gave him the CEO position. They still let him keep it. So Brian France is love him or hate him, he has done things that has been very detrimental to the sport in terms of like rule changes and stuff like that. Like there was this policy that his administration came up with. And before I continue, I'm gonna leave a link in the description to a few videos over this discussion. A Real Rad Man, David Land, and David Estep did some. Not David Estep, but Eric Estep did some really good analysis of these events, and it would really do good to have some added discussion into it. But one thing David was talking about in his video was that there was this system, this new rule that came out during the Brian France administration, as he said, that fine people for acts detrimental to the sport, like, you know, doing stupid shit, like wrecking somebody in a race for no reason at all, or making some stupid comments about someone else personally at the racetrack and stuff like that. It's just this really big, it was like, this thing was like, you know, it was supposed to keep drivers in check whenever they were being retarded. That's not what it was used for, though, and this is something that a lot of people really blame Brian France for, is they didn't use it in order to keep drivers in line on a behavioral level. They enforced it against people who were just speaking their thoughts about the rules, the rule package, and the cars and stuff like that. Like, you know, remember a couple of years ago, Tony Stewart got in trouble for suggesting stuff about lug nuts. And then he had also gotten fined for saying stuff about Goodyear tires and how he didn't think they were being used all that well by NASCAR. So there was a whole bunch of stuff. It's like a lot of people think NASCAR was just, as far as, and like, you know, in addition to all of these rules changes over the years, especially with the crap surrounding inspection of the cars, there's also another big thing is like they have severely made the process of inspecting a race car before a race so bad that literally almost the entire field, unless they're an underfunded team, can literally have their cars messed with, and then based on one little thing that may or may not be their fault, be the driver team's fault, they could get sent to the back and get points taken away and stuff like that. And it's just like, why? And it's just like, how is this helping the sport? And so, and you know, the last few years in particular, since 2013, I believe, NASCAR had been hitting a steep slump. Yeah, you know, the Gen 6 cars just weren't working for people as much as they used to. A lot of big name drivers weren't really working their way up like they would with other cars, like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart. They struggled with the Gen 6 cars a lot. You know, and the NASCAR seemed to be pushing for a lot of younger names to take over the sport, which led a lot of people to assume that NASCAR didn't really care about the established drivers. They only cared about lining their pockets by promoting all the little guys, which led to the controversy surrounding early this year and last year as well about the young guns. But, you know, this whole race with Chase Elliott seemed to be an attempt to really help rectify that, because like NASCAR was in the news. Like when Chase Elliott won his first race, like it was on ESPN, it was on Fox Sports, it was on NBC, it was on regular Fox, it was on CNN, it was all over the media. And it was good media exposure because the poster child to succeed, Dale Earnhardt Jr., won his first race. That's something that a lot of people really wanted to see. A lot of people, love or hate Chase Elliott, did at least want to see the guy win one race. And it was really good to see him win. I watched that whole race before I went to work, and it was a really, really good race. I honestly think that's one of the best Watkins Glen races I've seen in the past couple of years. And seeing Chase Elliott hold off the defending champion like that was really satisfying for me. It just felt really good to see. It felt like the race was handled in an appropriate manner. And, you know, and top that off with the news coverage, I think it was really helping NASCAR in that regard. Alright, and NASCAR has was beget by a whole bunch of controversies that don't even have to do with the sport. Like, oh, NASCAR fans are racist, thing that a lot of people in the media seem to perpetuate. And have still been perpetuating for some time, and Eric Estep has another good video on that one I'm going to leave down in the description. Talking about, saying, oh no, NASCAR fans are racist, sexist, bigot, misogynist, or whatever, and stuff like that. And, there's a whole slew of things that people use to try to slander NASCAR, and this situation with Brian France just gave them a whole freaking carton of things to push on NASCAR fans. Alright, and it's not going to be lovable type of stuff like Ricky Bobby. This is going to be like, this is a thing we're going to attach you this is a thing we're gonna label you with. We're gonna attach it to you, and there's no way you're gonna be able to shrug it off no matter what you do. And you know, that's just that sucks. Now, but another perspective is how long did people know that Brian France was like this? How long did they know that he was a drug addict or and an alcoholic? How long did people know about this? People had to have known that this is what was happening to Brian France over the years. But, I mean, I'm telling you, people had to have known. I know people had to have known because, you know, people can get snuffed out of their jobs on a whim on that when it comes to this type of stuff. It happens a lot. Especially with, you know, like the Me Too stuff, like slightest hint of ever committing sexual abuse, and then you're out of the job, even if the claim is actually false. So it's just like, well, how the heck are we gonna get through this then? And it's just really irritating because, you know, you're trying to find the facts of a situation, but then everybody's being idiots over it. And I'm just really confused as to what Brian France was thinking, but I'm also really confused as to what, you know, the NASCAR execs were thinking. You know, NASCAR people were taking power away from Brian France for years. All right, and, like, you know, his power with NASCAR has been diminishing rapidly, and then this happens, and you're like, well, why didn't you guys do something to him? Why aren't you guys going up to an intervention style thing, talking to him about this stuff? Why weren't they doing this stuff? All right, and also made me just think that they didn't really care. They just let Brian France do their own thing, and I think it's more of a shady business practice thing more than anything. It's just like they didn't care. They wanted the guy out of there because it was what the fans wanted. Nobody really liked Brian France, and for good reason in some ways, not so much in others, but still, a lot of people just did not like Brian France. And then, you know, they were getting progressively, you know, tamping down his power with NASCAR, but then you still make him the figurehead of the sport. You still make him the CEO, the guy who is still, you know, the chief exec. So it's just like, well, if you knew this type of stuff was going to happen, if you knew that he was doing this, why even bother letting him stay as CEO? Why don't you just make him leave, or like make him do something at a lower level position, or let someone else in his family take over, since it is a family business? Why couldn't they do something like that? And it's just, I just think they really didn't care. They just wanted to, I think some of those execs really just wanted him gone, and they needed a reason to do it, and they just needed to wait for the right time, so that way they could avert the blame away from them. And that way they could just give all Brian France the blame, because, I mean, NASCAR's been under a lot of scrutiny by the fans in previous years. I think they just wanted an excuse to get Brian France gone if that was the case, and that's pretty bad. But that's just me being conspiratorial. But, you know, it's like, his brother Jim France has taken over in the meantime. He's on an indefinite leave of absence, but I think he's just gone for good. I don't think he's on a leave of absence. I think he's just gone. And then, and, you know, a lot of people are speculating that Jim isn't going to stay for long, which I do think he isn't going to stay for long. And so a lot of people are saying, like, you know, let his sister do it or something like that, which would be pretty cool. And then also the buyout stuff that came up earlier this year gained more steam right after this incident. Now, if you don't know about the buyout, basically a lot of people have been, you know, speculating about whether or not NASCAR is going to get bought out by someone else, because, you know, NASCAR's been losing a lot of sponsors. It's been losing a lot of money over the years. Fans aren't engaged like they used to be. So it was just, and so it's just like, but really, like, honestly, it's just like, I don't know really what NASCAR is really trying to do here, and this, I think NASCAR has been trying to fight back on the buyout thing, but seeing the stuff with Brian France, that might have just sped, like David Land said, it might have sped up the process of which that the buyout would happen, and if it does happen, then that's kind of sad. A buyout of NASCAR would not be really beneficial to the sport, considering it is a family-run thing. It's always been a family-run thing. And ultimately, the price this is going to pay for NASCAR is we're going to lose more sponsors. Okay, progressively, I've been looking over the years and over the past couple months, NASCAR's losing sponsors. We lost 5 Hour Energy a few weeks ago. Like, they're leaving after this season's over with, despite the fact that they stayed with Clint Boyer, despite the fact that Clint Boyer was involved in a cheating incident in 2013. But 5 Hour Energy decided they're gone. Like, they don't want to stay with NASCAR anymore. And we've been losing a lot of big sponsors over the years. We lost DuPont, we lost Goodwrench, we lost Old Spice, we lost Office Depot. We've been losing a lot of familiar sponsors. Like, we're losing Lowe's. We lost. Yeah, but yeah, it's just like we've just been losing a lot of big sponsors, and it's just with this whole situation with Brian France, I don't really think that we're really going to see much of a resurgence in that field. Because, I mean, like, Chase Elliott winning, that would carry over a whole slew of sponsors for him. He has Napa and stuff like that, which are still big name sponsors, but I mean, he's been getting a lot of other sponsors too, like Sun Energy One, which is the scheme that he won with, and this one, the new one. And so, seeing him win with that would attract a couple of new people. And that would be like, oh crap. That would be like a really cool thing to see. It's just a lot of people just trying to capitalize off the success of a young person like Chase Elliott, and then people like Eric Jones who have won a race that are winning, that have won at plate tracks and stuff like that, and people who aren't necessarily big time winners but are decent enough on their own could get sponsors like that. And we could get some contingency sponsors back in NASCAR, because I mean, if you look at contingency sponsors with NASCAR, we used to have tons of contingency sponsors. Now we've only got it down to 5 at least on some cars, for at most 3 for some. Alright, and seeing Chase Elliott win would have brought, I think, some of those contingency sponsors back, like a lot of big time sponsors that NASCAR have always had. But now, with any chance of that happening is just flown out the window. And you can, and this is all going to come down to this situation. It really is. And honestly, I want to say that there's a bright side to this, and honestly, the only bright side is that if you didn't like Brian France and he's gone, then that's the only real bright side. That's what you wanted, that's what you got. But honestly, this is something that's going to stick with NASCAR for a while, and it's not going to help it in the near future. If at least the next 5 years, NASCAR is going to continue to get a slump, and it's because NASCAR was once represented by a guy who was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And that's not good. That's not something that a lot of people want to be associated with. And I can completely understand that. Just not only from a business standpoint, but from just a decent standpoint. So it just sucks that it just sucks that it's come to that, to be honest with you. It really does. And the sooner we can get past this, the better. But I don't think it's gonna get past this anytime soon. And if we really can't get past it, then I'm not sure about the future of the sport. So anyway, thank you guys for watching my first NASCAR discussion video. I hope you guys, enjoyed it to some degree. I was really wanting to do like a really good video, just a really good feel-good video over this entire thing. I just really wanted to do that, but honestly, seeing all this crap happen with Brian France, it just kills my enthusiasm. Like, I had so much enthusiasm for NASCAR right after Chase Elliott won, and then seeing this stuff with Brian France, it was just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see. All right, as a kid, as a guy who's been watching NASCAR for legitimately his entire life, you know, it's just heartbreaking to see, and I really wish something would happen to try to help fix it sooner or later. Because honestly, this sucks.